Hey everybody, back with Fernando, and we're going to be talking about a few more chapters in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, taking you through and just, giving some of our own commentary and insights, take it or leave it kind of thing, as always. And so, yeah, I'm going to share the screen and we'll get started. So we come to chapter.
Oh wow! I've never noticed that. I mean, look at this. This is really crazy. The book jacket is exactly the same as the hardcover one in this edition. That's
I have that same thing too. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like a cartoon or something where like somebody like takes off like a mask and it's just their face.
Yeah.
It's like the same
like at the end of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Just before they figure out who the real guy is. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So here we have chapter 4 is zodiacal signs described.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is going to be a shorter video than the last one because, the first 3 chapters are very heavy. But in chapter 4, basically what we have is the importance of the Rashis. And contrary to the descriptions of the planets, what we have here is that Parashara basically alludes the significance of the Rashis, of the 12 Rashis, to the different qualities that make them up. And I just want to add something, it is a modern conception to associate the Rashis to the Babas. You know what I mean? It is a modern conception to associate the meaning of Aries, for example, to that of the meaning of the first house. They have similarities, but they're not exactly the same.
Right. And like you get, I like what you mean, like where a lot of modern astrologers, especially in the West, will say like, oh, first house Aries, Mars, they're exactly the same archetype.
Yes.
And so like if a person has first house stuff, if they have Aries stuff, it's like the same thing. But that is a modern conception. It seems like the only thing we get in the past, and I don't know if we get it here or not, in the old text, is this association of basically the body parts of the signs to the houses. And that's really the only, because that's just a very practical way to work with it. But the thing is that the first house has very little in common with Aries when it comes to practical delineation, right? Like we're not going to look at Aries in the horoscope to learn about a person's body and their wit and talent and sort of, personality.
You look at Aries for the head, for example, just as you mentioned, the significations of the numbers and related to the Rashis, in my experience, can only be associated as a secondary factor in relation to medical astrology in terms of the significance of the Kala Purusha, but only secondarily, and also not only as a thing for medical astrology, but you could also associate it with the numerological significations. But once again, only as a secondary factor. And I say this because as we're going to read now, Parashara never mentions that Aries is like the first house.
No.
Taurus is like the second house. He doesn't mention that. Actually, and the descriptions are very simple in terms of just adding up different qualities, and that's it. And contrary to other writings, specifically Gemini sutras, where you kind of have to really think about the meaning of the Rashis, here it's just different qualities.
It's pretty simple stuff, And in the beginning here, I'm going to just skip to the end of this shloka. I like this. Sri Vishnu, the invisible, and theoretically indivisible, is time personified. His limbs are the 12 Rashis commencing from Aries, right? So it's the cosmic man, right?
The Kala Purusha, the body of time.
Yeah, the soul or body of time. It's the same thing as Adam Kadmon in Kabbalistic tradition, at least I believe.
Yes.
Or the Hermetic, the Hermetic tradition talks about the same thing, like the cosmic man, So this gets into how, like, we are a microcosm of the universe as man, the thinker, irrespective of gender. And so this is a very philosophical statement, right? Because like Vishnu as time personified is represented by the 12 signs of the zodiac,
Yeah.
So
this is an idea, as you say, that we see in basically all traditional forms of astrology, how the signs per se represent the body of the all-knowing God, let's say. And at the same time, you know, we can take the allusion, the analogy that the planets are like the conscious aspects of God, and the signs are the unconscious aspects of God.
Yeah.
And basically just like the body is, you know, the body is just a vessel, right?
Right.
And the consciousness is our soul or spirit. And that's how planets function. You know, planets are like the essence, the consciousness, and the signs are the body, you know, the vessel, the unconscious thing. Although, you know, some people might say that everything has consciousness to different degrees, but that's another topic for another time. But yeah, definitely. So if we want to continue reading.
Sure, yeah. So then we get the limbs of Kalapurusha here, and I always thought that it was interesting that for some reason it's changed here slightly, where he gives thighs, or he gives. Wait, no. What does he do? He gives. Never mind. It's he gives ankles instead of shins to Aquarius. I think that's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But probably, you know, you can deduce that it's basically from the ankle to the knees that represent Aquarius. Yeah.
Yeah, so otherwise everything's the same as your.
And I believe these are exactly more or less the same delineations you get for other medieval and Renaissance astrology depictions of the body of the cosmic man. You know, it's more or less the same.
More or less, yeah. Face is given to Taurus, which I think is really interesting. And I think
it's evolution, like Rashi, right? And the face is beautiful. I mean.
Makes sense, yeah. And then heart is given to Cancer, because Cancer is like that area where the heart would reside. A lot of other classical texts actually give the heart to Leo, and they just say like chest and breast and lungs to Cancer. But, you know, these are just sort of subtleties that...
And usually the heart is the sun also. So, there's always a little bit of debate between Leo and Cancer in relation to the heart and the stomach.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's, you know, those Rashis here, like after Gemini and before Sagittarius, you know, those Rashis, Scorpio, Libra, Virgo, Cancer, and Leo, you kind of get different, because you also get the same thing with Libra and Scorpio. I mean, what are the generals, Libra or Scorpio? You know, Scorpio supposedly is the hidden part between the gluteus. But it also says that Venus is like the part of the genitals between the navel and the, let's say, the pubic area.
Sure.
But, you know, obviously, you know, the female organs are mainly inside the body. The male organs are mainly outside of the body. So, you know, you kind of get a lot of things that are detailed that you have to figure it out. And, you know, the same thing you get with Virgo and Libra. You know, Virgo says it's the stomach, but where does Libra start? Where does Virgo start? Where does Leo start? Where does Virgo? You know, that part between Cancer and, you know, everything is clear from Sagittarius to Pisces and from Aries to Gemini. I mean, in terms of how the body parts associate, but from Cancer to Scorpio, you kind of get, you know, different types of illusions, which at the same time is the part of the body that is most hidden and mysterious, because you really don't know what's inside unless you open up the body, right? Which are the main part of the body that has all the main systems and organs, at least the great majority of them. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I digressed.
No,
there.
That's okay. Well said. Yeah, good stuff. That's why we're making these videos. So. Cool. So next we get classifications of signs. We get movable, fixed, dual, and, you know, then we get malefic, benefic. I think he's basically saying that, you know, I don't really understand this. It could just be like the malefic and benefic successively. Like,
he means female and male.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, so. And then similar, okay, he says it right there. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then This is interesting, right? This is related to the doshas of Ayurveda. Aries, Leo, and Sag are bilious, which would be Pitta.
Exactly.
Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are windy, which would be Vata. And Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are mixed, right? While the rest, being the watery Rashis, are phlegmatic or Kapha. And some people think, well, why wouldn't the air signs be windy? Is this like a misquote? Is this shloka messed up?
Yes,
but you know what?
You know
what's funny? You know what's funny is that actually this makes more sense to me because I've studied a decent amount of Greek medicine, and in the Greek system, the earth signs are typically given to the melancholic humor. And actually, according to a friend of mine who is a practitioner of Greek medicine and who studied Ayurveda quite intensely here in New Mexico at the Ayurvedic Institute, we have that actually, oddly enough, Vata and melancholic are the most similar in terms of those cross systems, even though melancholic is considered usually to be more earthy.
Yes.
But it's still cold and dry, and you get the same kind of symptoms, like a lot of anxiety, gas, holding things in, repression. So from my perspective, this actually makes a lot of sense. And there's an ancient Ayurvedic physician who suggests that blood or the airy humor, or not airy in terms of
sanguine.
Yes, that suggests that actually the sanguine humor could be a fourth dosha, but he doesn't quite develop that, and for whatever reason Ayurveda has always gone off the 3, whereas Greek has gone off the 4. But they are very similar systems, you know. You've got the Agni versus the Ignis.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Lars, I'm gonna say
Moving
something.
on. No.
I'm gonna say something. I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner because I'm gonna say something, and you can quote me on this. Of all the esoteric sciences, the most mysterious and the most difficult to really grasp and understand, the most occult of all occult sciences is diet and nutrition. Okay.
Sure.
And in my experience, you know, Ayurveda has a lot of interpretations. Ayurveda has a lot of schools.
It's
and
not
at the
one
same
dimensional.
time, nutrition and medicine has a lot of different schools in different parts of the world.
Very true.
It's very occult. It's very difficult to understand, mainly because, you know, medicine tries to generalize people into categories.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you come to the realization that people are almost an infinite variation of mixes between those categories.
Yeah.
And you know, when it comes to the doshas, you know, in my opinion, you know, I consider earth signs tridoshic. You know, I consider.
I've heard that point of view before, and I think it's very logical, actually. Like both.
Because I mean, lava exists in the form of fire, which is like dirt with fire. Dust in the wind is like wind and dust.
And a song by
mud is
some 70s band.
What? I'm sorry?
And it's the name of a song by
some
70s band. We're all just dust in the wind. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, so let's just move on. Like I don't want to like continuously talk about this. I think people just have to decide for themselves.
And let's be honest, you know, people think Parashara is like the Bible of astrology. You know, Parashara kind of mixes things up once.
Yeah.
From time to time. So yeah, people have to realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Okay, so Aries described.
And you're going to see that the descriptions are just basically the modality, or more or less, you know, the quadruplicity, the triplicity, and the different limbs and the part of the Rashi represents. But once again, there's no association between houses and Rashis per se per Parashara. So yeah.
Yeah, and so we're not going to read each of these shlokas one by one, but basically, like, you know, we'll just do a little bit of the Aries one. You know, you can see here interesting things, like it's a quadruped sign. It's strong during the night. I don't know why some signs are strong during day and others by night. There's not like a clear rationale from my perspective.
And different interpretations, yeah.
Yeah, it denotes courage, blah, 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 like has to do with East and Kings, you know, and then it's a Rajasic guna, right? And then it rises with its back, which we also saw mentioned in Yavanajataka, that some signs rise backwards. So this is a very old tradition of like some, and it actually, I don't use it in my practice because it's just too confusing to me, but supposedly you can get
those things are more for electional astrology.
They are, but they're also for dashas. Like supposedly a sign rising with its back, the dasha will give its fullest effects, I think, like later, something like that, whereas head first, it's like more in the beginning. So, you can use these subtleties and whatnot. And, he does the gunas kind of sporadically here as well. Like I prefer to just take the cardinal signs as rajas, the fixed as tamas, and the mutable as sattvic, kind of going off some subtle hints given by Gemini.
There are different interpretations of the gunas in association with rashis too, just like the doshas. Yeah,
exactly. So like we just find a lot of, this is a really good chapter, actually. There's just a lot of good, simple information.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And, you just get like these things like quadruped and royal sign, Cancer's a Brahmanical sign, and so on. And like you can use these things in delineation actually quite well and quite easily. If a person has a lot of watery rashis, right, they might be more Brahmanical. They might have a tendency to be more Brahmanical in their disposition, which means scholarly, seeking wisdom, seeking spiritual liberation, things like this. Brahmanas were originally not just like an upper wealthy group of people. They were originally like the priestly sage kind of caste, and so the same with all the castes levels and whatnot. But so again, you can use these things. We basically get, if I remember correctly, like fire signs or kshatriyas, right? And then
there's also another discussion between the Vaishyas and the Shudras. Some people say the Shudras are the air sign, other people say the Shudras are the earth sign, while the Vaishyas are, people mix the air and earth with Vaishyas and Shudras. I believe Shudras is air and Vaishyas is earth.
And I think I do the opposite. So anyway, but whatever you decide, right, you test it out, you look at it in the charts, and you go, oh, this person has an abundance of fire, right? They might have a kshatriya disposition, like a warrior business kind of person disposition, and so on. So it's very useful stuff. And then, and then we get this random Nisheka Lagna, which makes me want to kill myself. No, I'm just kidding. It's just kind of so random, and it has to do with
intercourse.
You can use it to discern stuff about the womb, the person's time spent in the womb, and also the longevity and death of the parents, as a very strange thing to calculate. Deals with Gulika, and I don't know. I don't really want to spend too much time on this, but what do you
Basically, it's the idea of figuring out when the intercourse took time, when the intercourse took place. I've never really seen anybody talk about this. This is the type of thing that probably some hidden Jyotishis parampara line would use as some type of mysterious technique. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it's useless, but I've never really used it. I don't see how this is going to be usable in the modern context, where people have intercourse in a more mundane way than before, right?
More liberal fashion.
I mean, before you had to get married, you had to have your parents official say to really engage with a man or a woman, and then you got married, and then you had intercourse in order to have children and have a family, right? But nowadays, people are having sex at 13, 14, people having sex every day, more than once. I mean, I don't want to say this didn't happen in ancient times. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, but if you read the Kama Sutra, like
but usually the people who had that type of life seldom went to astrologers, or at least, were not, didn't have the ability of having an astrologer to read their charts. This was something reserved for royalty, and
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and usually you would remember when the intercourse took place, or at least the day it happened. And I've never really used it, so I can't really talk about it because I don't know.
No, I think it's a cool technique. I don't think it belongs here in the book.
It kind of looks out of place. Yeah,
very out of place. It may not belong at all in the entire book anywhere. I don't know. It's just, again, it's so random no matter where you would put it. But I think it's a cool technique, and I'm going to be honest, I'm too lazy to test it out. Like, there's so many other things I want to do with astrology.
I'm pretty sure there's got to be some.
Lazy, so.
I'm pretty sure there's got to be some Indian astrologers who tried this out. I've read about this. I don't know if it were B.B. Raman books or K.N. Rao books, but I've read about this. But I've never really used it, so I can't really talk about it because I don't.
Yeah, sure, cool. Okay, so moving on.
Chapter 5.
Oh yeah, he gives quite. Santanam gives a lot of commentary.
Yeah, Santana gives too much commentary, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked his. I liked when he was just playing guitar. And, Oye, como va? Oh, sorry, that's Santana. Okay, that was not the melody.
Black Magic Woman. Yeah.
I got a black magic woman. Okay. Anyway, this next
Special
chapter
Ascendants
is on black magic women. As you probably guessed. No, this is on special ascendants, which are basically just special. That's it. And let's go to the next chapter. No.
No. I mean.
Sorry, I'm in a silly mood. So
yeah. Don't worry.
Go ahead. Yeah, explain.
Usually, I'm the one doing the jokes, but yeah. Well, in special ascendants, what we have here are the descriptions of the Hora Lagna, of the Baba Lagna, of the Ganita Lagna, and also we talk about the Varnala Dasha. Okay, let's first talk about these 3 Lagnas. Usually, for all those people out there who have Jyotish programs, you're gonna see these Lagnas appear sooner or later.
And they're in Gemini as well. Gemini.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say. The application of these Lagnas I've seen and used in Gemini application, mainly to figure out the Yogini planet, which is less like a Yogacarca planet, more or less. We're not gonna get into that technique, but the idea is that these Lagnas, present a sort of point of interest in the chart. As I was taught by Mr. Boni, one of my Jyotish teachers, Hora Lagna associates to, obviously, Hora, like the second Varga that we're going to discuss, to financial aspects. The Baba Lagna, it's kind of weird. It associates more to like well-being or like the potential of the person. And finally, Gatika Lagna orients towards power positions. And usually when these Lagnas arrange themselves in a way that they aspect all 3, a single house with a special planet, then that planet has a potential to give a good result when the dasha comes for that planet, or the sub dasha, whatever, or the book. However, I've heard other applications. These are the applications I've used in my practice. But we have here once again a thing that Parashara is going to do a lot. He's going to describe how to get, and that he has done already for the past 5 chapters, that he's going to describe how to calculate something, but he's not going to go into describing what it means, it is
not too much.
And that's the thing I have to say with them.
Cool.
And if we want to skip to Varnala Dasha.
Yeah, let me just say a couple things too. It's interesting how these are calculated. They're basically taking into account sunrise and then dealing with different lengths of time. We have 5 gatis.
Very complicated, yeah.
20 minutes, and then we get here Hora Lagna, 60 minutes, and then the Gatika we get 24 minutes. So they're getting more and more refined. I think they're, in a way, these are really cool. I don't really use them because I have gotten to a place where I prefer to use things that I can, calculate more easily in my head, aside from the fundamental kind of stuff, that's like, I don't want to spend hours doing, but these are, there's a variety of ways to use these, sure, and the names maybe give some sort of clue, like bhava, means basically state of mind. That's like a bad translation of it, but it basically
but that's what it means.
So the bhavas, right, and then bhava lagna could give something about the person's state of mind, and some people say to use hora for wealth, and gatika lagna, I think you said, for power, right?
Strength.
So I mean, that's cool. Like, I think that works too. Parashara basically just goes on to say, right here in Shloka 9, keeping the planets at birth as it is, prepare various bhava charts with respect to each special ascendant, and analyze as done for the natal ascendant. And this is kind of insane, because that gives us 4 ascendants. Plus, if we read from the moon, 5, the sun, 6, and the Aruda Lagna or Lagna Pada, 7. Plus,
and 8. I'd add an 8. It's the Dasha Lagna also.
And Dasha Lagna, which is what the position of the
planet whose time period is active.
So you can just go crazy with this, and this is kind of the problem. Even Santanam, I think, says periodically, he might even say it here somewhere, like that, we have to approach this kind of liberally, because otherwise we'll be swimming in ascendants, and almost every sign will be ascendant. But the idea is basically,
and not only that, if you combine it with Gemini techniques, you're gonna get even more.
You're gonna go crazy,
Once again, and this is what we mentioned before in previous videos. This is why you shouldn't go to the classics as a neophyte. You need first a solid Jyotish or any astrology formation before you really go into these books, because you're gonna get really confused.
Absolutely.
And you're gonna realize that in astrology there are a lot of things that are not explained. There are a lot of interpretations of the same concept that are applied in different ways, depending on different schools and different outlooks. And because at the same time, you could say that, but a Jyotishi, traditional one, God knows where, would say, well, that's how the thing is done, and this is how we have to do it. And you have to open your mind to the Jyotish in order to have the clarity of mind to really do a great job. And that's the thing. I mean, that's something that we have to say,
Although, I mean, I have a couple friends who have really traditional lineages, and they've both said that, like, these kinds of lagnas were scarcely used by their teachers and traditions, so I think that, again, I'm going to say this, like, astrologers throughout all ages, and we see it happening in the modern day without any sort of second thought given by most astrologers. Astrologers throughout all ages have always liked to experiment with like wild and crazy mathematical esoteric formulas
because they don't have friends and they don't go out.
They don't have friends, they don't get laid, like, I mean,
whoa, wait, what? Well, no, stop that. Stop slandering the profession. Stop.
Yeah, right. Well, and a lot of astrologers probably were ascetics in the past. They were more ascetic. They would wake up and do their prayers and whatever, their japa and all this stuff too. Anyway, so we're lazy in this day and age. We've got our computer programs. We can test out anything we want.
Talk for yourself, man. I'm not lazy. Continue.
Anyway, so the point is that you've got, I mean, you will, astrology is a black hole in terms of techniques. Like you will find that if you read enough classics in any tradition, you will start drowning in the amount of techniques that you can,
and the amount of contradictions also.
Yeah, somebody once said that if you did everything that Abu Mashar recommended in his book on solar returns, that you would be sitting there for like 80 hours. analyzing the solar return. Like, it's preposterous how many techniques he jammed into this little book here. And by the way, that's not even the whole book. Like, we don't even have the whole book. Unfortunately, a lot of it was lost. But imagine, like, if we had it, it's just like, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this. And what it comes down to is, like, you have to do what works for you. And some of that comes from experimenting. Some of that comes from a teacher, if you're blessed to have somebody like that who can
this is
you know
why,
what, man, I tried this and it's really not worth it. Like just do.
I'm going to tell you something, Lars. This is why spiritual practice is so important.
Sure.
Because if you have the spiritual practice, you will open the Jyotirvidya, which is basically the force of astrology. And the Jyotirvidya will get into you, and you will have the ability.
The Jyotirvidya.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's. I'm not saying this as a joke. It's really true. I mean, this is the thing. If you have the ability to have the serenity, the strength, and the wisdom of your soul to do this, you have to have a spiritual practice. You have to have a sort of ascetic.
Or just listen to that Godsmack song, Serenity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you have to have the clearness in mind to do this, because if you address it in a very logical way, you're gonna get stuck pretty quick.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, astrology is not linear, so I think that's why
nothing is linear.
Nothing really is. Yeah, nothing really is. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Varnada which is yet another special ascendant.
Well, once again, I'm gonna say I've never used this before, but I'm aware that this is used for longevity. Yeah. And, longevity is a really, catch-22 topic in astrology, because you're going to read, specifically Cain Rao books, for example. You're going to read that before you analyze anything, you have to see the Ayu of the chart, which is the longevity of the chart. And everybody says that. Before you do this, you got to check the longevity. Before you do that, you got to check when the person's going to die. And then you say, okay, then how do I check that? And nobody explains how you check the longevity of a person.
Actually, the Persians do quite meticulously.
Yeah. I mean, but it's a catch-22 because nobody really wants to know when they're going to die.
Yeah.
B, it's a very taboo subject.
It is,
but it is something that it is not taught as clearly and as openly as it should, and I understand why. I understand why, because this is an ethical thing.
I learned. I taught myself how to do it using like Persian.
When are you gonna die?
I'm not gonna say
exactly.
I don't know. I don't know if I predicted my own death correctly. I did look at that possibility, but
that's exactly what I want to say. I mean, look at how you reacted. That this is the catch-22 thing. This is the catch. You got to check the longevity. How do I check that? I'm sorry, I can't teach that. I mean, what?
Well, my point is, I don't think the technique is so useful in terms of like assessing when somebody will likely die. I don't think that's useful information.
The idea. Let me explain. I mean, the idea of this is to know if the person is going to enjoy certain combinations for greatness. I mean, and this is the thing with Raja Yoga that we're going to discuss eventually in this series.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That if the person has a great Raja Yoga or a great Dana Yoga, if you use the Cain Rao approach, I mean, is this person going to enjoy it?
Will they ever reap the full?
Exactly, because obviously we know that if the Raja Yoga expresses itself when the person is young in the Vimshottari Dasha scheme, or really old in the Vimshottari Dasha scheme, he's not going to enjoy it. Maybe when he's young, the parents will. Maybe if he's old, something might happen, but he really won't have vitality. But at the same time, if the person has that in the perfect time of their life, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, but if he doesn't live that long, then it doesn't matter. I mean, the client is going to say, yeah, I'm going to have a great Raja Yoga when I'm 50, and he dies when he's 45. I mean, that's the thing. And obviously the astrologer, and once again, this is an ethical thing. I once heard this man, Dr. Harness, talk about this, the 3Ds, right? Deceased, death, and divorce. The astrologer is not going to take this information and right when a client comes up and he sits down and he's going to tell the client, you're going to die this day, you're going to get divorced this day, and you're going to get sick this day, $100. Thank you very much. No, that's really unethical. This is information that the astrologer has to keep secret. Well, not secret, but has to keep it to himself. And it needs not to utter it unless the client really intends to know and ask. And that's what I want to say.
Yeah, well, what I was going to talk about is similar to that, is that like in studying these methods, what I realized is that like they can still be valuable, not necessarily in terms of finding an exact date or even a general date, but just in seeing like, and this is getting into the Persian Hellenistic methodologies, but it's like, does the person have these planets that are basically called the giver of life and the giver of years, and like how powerful are they? Because that can give you a lot of psychological information about the person. Forget about their physical existence. It can just show you like how much vitality does this person have, how much power, strength, fortitude, and things like this to keep going. Because realistically, we don't die because, like our body just expires and like it's time to go, like our clock ran out. We die because our basically like our soul self is saying like it's time to go. Like people die when they're really ready to go. It sometimes it doesn't seem like that.
Well, usually, because I've esoterically speaking, if a person does not follow their path in life, they go out earlier in my experience.
They may go out earlier, but there's still this spiritual pull for them to leave. And I'm not talking about like horrific accidents or like being murdered or suicide. I'm talking about like, let's say somebody gets cancer, right? Like in my experience of observing this, it's kind of this thing where the person is getting cancer to burn away a lot of karmas very quickly. And that is it's sort of a spiritual cleansing. It's like, okay, things are so out of sync that it's time to go, So I think that in that sense, these kinds of longevity techniques can give deeper insight spiritually, even though that's not how they were traditionally used. So, but yeah, we could make a whole video about this.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I'm really not clear about longevity techniques because
yeah,
a lot of I know usually you get the idea of the eighth, Saturn, quadrants, but sure. I mean it's kind of
it's a bit amorphous and nebulous. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, back to this Varnada thing. Like we get down here in 16 to 20. I'm kind of skipping ahead. The Rudra planet and Shula Dasha and like how this ties into Varnada, and like this Rudra planet really sounds like a technique out of Gemini. Like Gemini calls certain I think there is a Rudra planet in Gemini. There's definitely like a Brahma planet, and they're like it's kind of an esoteric technique to figure out what it is. Gemini's like very obscure. And so this is another thing where like, why the hell is this in here? I don't really know. Like, should it really be in here? So, we just get a lot of that in Parashara. But then at the end here, we get some like very esoteric statement that Ernst really did a lot with, Ernst Wilhelm, especially in his software, that the natal ascendant is to be calculated according to birthplace, while Bhava Lagna, Hora Lagna, and the Gatika Lagna are common to all places. So Ernst's interpretation was that these should be assessed from something called Yamakoti, which I guess was like an ancient city, or like there's like an actual location that he was able to figure out where it was through studying. Like I think the what's the famous astronomical text of India? The
Surya Siddhanta?
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, in his lectures on for those interested in Ernst Wilhelm's lectures on Shadbala, which is much later in this text, he talks about this quite extensively. He talks about Yamakoti and stuff, and I think he talks about these Bhava Lagna, Hora Lagna, and so on. And in his software, that's the default setting for how to calculate these. So kind of esoteric, Other people, I think, calculate them from the birthplace. Some people might calculate them from like a certain city in India. I forget. But anyway, I don't know if you've encountered that.
No, man, I really don't know.
Oh, well, yeah, you ought to check that out, because that would interest you for sure. It's
definitely
fascinating. But
anyway. I mean, yeah, there's so much content in Ernst websites that it's ridiculous.
And you can ask him about it too. It might be in another lecture where he talks about that. I might be forgetting, or it might be 2 lectures. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, moving on to chapter 6, the 16 divisions of the sign. This is sort of like one of the quintessential the next two, this chapter and the next, are sort of like very quintessential chapters.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it? The Varga fever? Yeah.
Varga fever, yeah. And Parashara is going to
you know that in Spanish, Vargas is a last name?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So
yeah. So if you
I
had
always
a Spanish
wondered.
teacher called Mr. Vargas, there you go.
16 Mr. Vargases. Yeah, the
Mr. Vargas. Yeah.
dimensions of Mr. Vargas, my Spanish teacher from 6th grade or something. Yeah, right. No, but yeah, this is according to him, Lord Brahma has described 16 kinds of Vargas. Of course, there are innumerable Vargas, because they're just mathematical divisions.
But let's be clear. Yeah. Parashara here just gives 16.
He just gives 16, yep.
He just gives 16, and man, 16 is all you need, okay?
I mean, I think for me, I follow more the Yavanajataka, and I just use 2.
Yeah, I mean, 16 is just an absurd amount of divisional charts. But, 16 is way too much, but some people intend to have more. They want to have an 8th division, an 11th division. Then you have the Aries system. I mean,
Aries,
right? Only gives 16 charts.
Yeah, and they're not 1 through 16 either, as we'll see.
Correct.
They skip around. Like he doesn't include like 5, 6,
5, 8, 11,
13,
14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, 28, 29, from 31 to 39, from 41 to 44, and from 46 to 59, there are no Vargas.
So those are the ones he doesn't include. So he skips around a lot, right? Like we go and we get like, D12, and then we get D16, and then we get D4, D27, so on, and it just kind of skips around a lot. Very interesting stuff. And here he's going to describe how they're calculated in addition to their names, right? The Rashi chart is just the birth chart itself, number 1.
The most important one, right?
Right. Yeah. Then we get Rashi and Hora calculated just like it's calculated in Yavanajataka, which is a solar half and a lunar half reversing for even signs. Then we get the deck.
By the way, let's say that there are different ways to calculate Hora.
Oh yeah, there are lots of different ways to.
Mainly 2, but they're different. And once again, there are different ways to calculate the Drekana also. So people.
Yeah, and for those interested, please visit our friend Rok Koritnik's website. I forget the name of his website at the moment, but he's writing.
I'll look it up.
Cool. Yeah, he's writing a lot of, I think it's just Rokoritnik Astrologer or something like that, but he's writing a lot of articles where he's really analyzing these divisional charts quite intensely in ways that a lot of, actually probably no other people have really done in quite a while. So you can see the different methods for calculating the Hora and the decadent and all these divisionals that he's pulling from different texts. He's making diagrams.
His website is koritnikastrologer.com.
Great. Yeah. Okay, cool. So you can check that out. ROK. And then I think KORITNIK. I believe that's how to spell it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me check. Oh, he's Slovenian, and I just closed it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I think people.
Anyway, just put Rock with K and astrologer, and you're gonna find.
Yeah, I think there's only one Rock in the astrology world right now. So.
Kortinik, KORITNIK.
Great. Okay, I spelled it right. So, and you could just find me or Fernando on Facebook, and we can direct you to. That as well. Anyway, so then we get the decadent, then we get, I don't want to like analyze these to death. You can just read it. It's pretty.
Oh no, man, I just don't want to do that because I mean, in this chapter, he only gives how to calculate them. That's it.
He only gives how to calculate, but there are a few I wanted to like touch base on. That's it. Yeah. The Saptamsha, for example, is calculated quite differently than it is in Yavanajataka. So for those of you interested,
that's interesting. I didn't notice that.
You can watch our videos on Yavanajataka. In this, the Saptamsha basically is Rashi based, and it moves to the 7th sign if you start in an even. So if you started in Taurus, the first Saptamsha would actually be Scorpio, the sign opposite, for example. if I'm not mistaken, at least. Yeah, see, here he gives it. In starting in Taurus, the first Saptamsha is the 8th sign, Scorpio. Whereas in Yavanajataka, basically you just take the planet that rules the sign and you go in the order of the 7 planets according to the Rashis they rule without repetition. So at some point we had a different way of calculating the Saptamsha, and that's what made it into Parashara. And I've always found that interesting. And sure enough, Yavanajataka uses the divisionals differently than Parashara, but we'll talk about that in the next chapter. Navamsha, good old Navamsha, simple. Dasamsha is interesting because for some reason you go to the 9th from the even Rashi. So in an odd Rashi like Aries, you just start with Aries and do a 10-fold division in the order of the signs. But in a Rashi like Taurus, you start from Capricorn, the 9th sign from Taurus, and then you do like he's giving here, right? 10, 11, 12, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, so on. So that's kind of mysterious, and it kind of, I don't like that personally. You know, you got to figure it out for yourself, but I just prefer
that. You feel that? You know what that is?
What?
Varga fever.
Varga fever. Yeah, I knew it. Shit, I picked it up when I went to that tropical island. Yeah. Damn it.
You got to use contraceptives, yeah.
Yeah. I guess it was from Mr. Vargas's wife. Okay. All right. No, now it's just getting bad. Okay.
No, but I mean, what you're saying makes sense. What you're saying makes sense. These Vargas are complicated. And, you know, Ernst has said that if there's a last frontier of exploration in Jyotish, is the study and research of Vargas, because there's a lot we don't know. And people have to take this in mind. Vargas have not been used as thoroughly as we're using it today before. I mean, Vargas started being used thoroughly in the 20th century.
Yeah,
specifically by people like B.B. Raman and Cain Rao, who brought them to the forefront of astrology. So really, we've been dealing with these charts only like, let's say 60, 70, 80 years at most. Yeah. So there's a lot of things, you know, and a lot of people use Vargas in different ways, you know, and we're going to see how Parashara, I don't want to talk about this now because we're just talking about the calculation, but there are many ways of interpreting them. There are many ways of calculating them. You know, we've just said that they differ from the Yavanajataka. And you know, for example, the Hora and the Drekana, there are, you know, I know 2 ways of calculating Hora. I know 3 ways of calculating Drekana. There's a lot of confusion, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me also, I just want to caution people to not get too crazy with these right off.
Exactly. Do not get the Varga fever.
When you can just click a button on computer and have all 16 Vargas at your beck and call
in 2 seconds, when in reality this would have taken you 3 hours to make.
Yeah, a lot is lost. A lot is lost because you don't have the contemplative space of calculating them by hand that often actually helps the intuition come out, has been my experience. So some people will disagree with me, and I'm not disparaging people who use software and calculate these and look at all of them. That's fine, whatever works for other people. I just found that in my own practice, like, yeah, these things, like, they work loosely, but I'm not getting much mileage out of them when I'm like just using them, like trying to look at all of them for every chart I look at. Like maybe you just look at one because, like one time I was looking at the Vimshamsha, which is kind of an esoteric one, just because of the state of this person's grandkid, like what they were going through. I just thought, you know, I wonder if the Vimshamsha would reveal something. And sure enough, it did. So that's an intuitive way to use it, even though I didn't calculate it by hand, right? So that's kind of what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's just...
And another thing, Parashara is explaining how to calculate these charts. But from a logical, empirical, scientific point of view, if you do not have the correct time of birth, none of this is useful.
Yeah, because the ascendant will,
because everything will be
off. Yeah, especially in the higher Vargas, because in the lower ones, like you can still at least get the positions of the planets.
Yes.
Right, because they don't move quickly enough generally. But in the higher ones, like you know, a few.
Now from a spiritual point of view, you know, you can get a good reading from a false time of birth. but that does not always happen like that.
Sure.
But people have to realize, do not get into Vargas unless you have a specific time of birth.
Yes, agreed. Cool. So, okay, so we're just going to kind of move through, and I'll just say a couple other things that I find interesting here and there. He gives a lot of deities for these divisions, like especially here in the Vimshamshas, he goes pretty crazy and gives a lot of deities.
Yeah.
A lot of them are deities that I haven't been able to discover anything about. Not that I've done extensive research, but
maybe for us Westerners, these things, these deities are off our radar. If there are Indians watching this video, we here in the West, we have a lack of sources for all these. Some might say, lesser known deities.
Yeah.
And it would be great for a database where we can really know about these deities, because there are a lot that you might Google them right now and you are not going to get a lot of information in English.
I think Dhumavati was one that I just couldn't find.
Yeah. And there's a couple also with the D60 deities. I mean,
absolutely.
Because they're different reiterations of probably deities that we know, maybe. Some might be regional. I don't know, but there are a lot of deities that are very what's the word? We seldom know them thoroughly.
Right. And what I will say about these deities and these esoteric names is they can or cannot come in handy. Basically, it just depends on how you are doing astrology. For me, this just confuses the hell out.
And not only that, Samsha, which is a Varga that has to do with spiritual life.
Yeah.
And you don't know what the deities are. I mean,
exactly.
You're in a pickle right there. It's
but we have to understand historically too that today everyone wants to psychoanalyze the hell out of everything, which kind of drives me nuts. And in the past, they would just say he's got they might say something like, oh, he's got the 9th lord or the 12th lord in this Vimshamsha, which relates to Lakshmi or relates to Bhavani or Dhumavati. And so they might prescribe some sort of ritual worship of that deity, right? Whereas today people want to go I want to know the myth about the deity, and then I want to psychoanalyze it, and then I want to try to say that this person has psychological qualities based upon this myth, and it's
that's
okay.
The difference. That's one of the difference between traditional astrology and modern astrology.
Yeah. And I'm not even saying that doesn't work. I'm just saying that gets you way out there in a place where you're, in my experience, if you think too much about any one thing in astrology, you can't interpret stuff.
Keep it short and keep it sweet. Do a Hanuman Chalisa, goodbye, and thank you very much. That's all you need.
16 hours later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. I'll see you guys later. I'm going to Taos for the Hanuman Chalisa at the what's his name ashram. There's a Hanuman ashram up there. Actually.
Oh, really? Wow.
It's one of 2 ashrams I think in the world that has this specific Hanuman statue.
That's very beautiful.
It was set up by Ram Das, but his guru. It's for his guru Neem Karoli Baba. Yeah. But anyway,
he still does Jyotish, I think. Yeah.
Ram Das? I don't think Ram Das ever did Jyotish.
He did Jyotish. Yeah, he did Jyotish also, right?
I don't think so.
He was with the manly these guys from the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. They still do Jyotish. I mean, he did other stuff, but he did Jyotish also.
He never wrote books on it. He wrote
no. He never wrote books.
Okay. Maybe he did some, yeah. Anyway, that ashram's got some major skeletons in the closet, which I won't go into right now.
All ashrams have skeletons in their closets because it's Kali Yuga.
Yeah, that's true. Okay,
all of them.
All right, guys. Well, anyway, I'm back from Taos. Did my 16-hour Hanuman Chalisa. And
so we're here with Siddhamsha.
Yeah, Siddhamsha, 124th part. As you can see, a lot of deities and stuff again. I like the Bamsha because the Bamsha is basically just the 27 nakshatras and those deities repeated again with slightly different names for some reason than some other texts give. But the Bamsha is the one division that gives deities that is actually a little bit more easily accessible, because if you already know the nakshatras and those deities, right, this is kind of it's like a subdivision of those nakshatras and the deities acting within the chart. So I think that's cool. And I think that on a side note, if you had a planet in, the nakshatra, like Sadabhishak, which is ruled by Varuna, right? And then you had that same planet in a D27 ruled by Varuna. I don't know if that's possible, but let's just say it is. Then that could be something where, that karma is getting re-emphasized, Anyway, Trim Samsha. So this is the same as given in Yavanajataka, except he adds these deities, which are basically just the 5 elements in deity form. And again, I'm going to say this about Trim Samsha. It's not a 30-fold division, according to Parashara and Yavanajataka, even though people make it out to be that. And it's basically, in my opinion, the Hellenistic bounds in a more streamlined manner, which is just an uneven 5-fold division of the zodiac signs. And each one is ruled by one of the 5 starry grahas. So sun and moon are not rulers. So this is what Parashara is asking us to calculate the Trim Samsha as. For some reason, most people think he's asking us to calculate it as a D30. But he's not. So just like to point that out. There's a lot of things that people ignore about this chapter, and this is
because people have never done what we're doing right now.
Yeah, man, but even some like really well-known people have done this, and they just choose to like use Parashara techniques with the D30, which
man, I don't
I'm not
know.
saying is wrong. I'm just saying like we got to be clear that Parashara is not telling us to do that. And
yeah, there's a quote that Indian Jyotishis repeat that people often quote Parashara, but they seldom read it.
Exactly.
And, especially with these things, and especially with the remedies that we're going to see eventually with the dashas.
Yeah.
He's not saying you to buy a $2,000 emerald to cure your...
No, they're much simpler.
Buddha dasha. No, he's telling you, give away some food and do some mantras and,
Simple stuff. Simple, really elegant stuff. So
yeah, and very useful. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we get the 40th division. I'm not going to go into that here. 45th division is interesting, but the one I wanted to just mention real quick is the D60, where again,
the famous Shashtyamsha.
Yes, again, this is the way Parashara tells us to use it is not necessarily to calculate a whole new chart with dignities, but to really emphasize the auspiciousness or inauspiciousness of the 60th division that a planet falls in, and judge that in concordance with its nature in the Rashi chart, right? So we don't need to look at a whole new D60 and get dignities. The idea is more like, and Santanam goes into this here too a bit somewhere in the commentary, but the idea is more like, let's say that we have the second lord, let's say it's fallen Mars, and it's in Brashta, which means fallen and vicious, right? Well, this could show that the person had like a really vicious relationship to their family, or that they do like very criminal things with money, Whereas, if you've got a good planet or any planet, let's say that same fallen Mars in this Deva Shashtyamsha, divine spiritual, right? Then maybe some of that really nasty looking karma of Mars fallen in Cancer ruling the second is like somewhat alleviated, somewhat made light of. And this is how I would use the Shashtyamshas if I ever decide to use them again, because I have not really worked with these that much.
You mentioned this briefly, but I just want to point out that once again, there's no mention of past lives.
Oh yeah, that's something people ascribe to D60, isn't it?
And there's no indication of past life. That is more, I think, of a modern thing that developed in the West.
Yeah.
And that it was absorbed by modern Jyotisha as part of all this theosophical, spiritist reinterpretation of astrology and reincarnation as a progressive evolutionary thing.
Yeah.
Parashara is not talking about past lives. He's just giving some deities. And we're going to read the next chapter. He just says it's just general.
Yeah.
General well-being. And I'm going to be talking about that later on. But I just want to say that there's no mention of past lives. There's no mention of Rahu or Ketu here either.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that people have to take into consideration when analyzing these modern concepts of reincarnation as an evolutionary process that is a modern interpretation that for some odd reason has, integrated itself into modern Jyotish as something old rather than something very new. And once again, he's just giving deities.
Right.
How do we interpret this? Once again, there are many ways. You just said one. I would say that maybe wherever the Atmakarka falls, that may be a deity that you might read to. Gemini also says that you look at the deity, at the planet that is 12 from Swamsha.
Yeah.
You can check where that is in D60 and recommend some deities to it. Also, the 6th from Amatyakarka, you can check the deity for it. This is all very, very subjective in many ways, although it has some specific delineations for the deities, but its application is subjective. And and I have a theory about this that we're going to be discussing in the next chapter. So yeah.
Yeah. And again, there's just a plethora of stuff you can use these for to complement your interpretation. You could use this stuff for medical analysis, looking at the 6th lord and the moon and the ascendant lord, things like that, and if you find that a person, has something I just saw one here that said very cold, right? That could tie things. Yeah, here it is. That could tie things together. That could tie something together if you're like, why is this person always sick? And you notice, their ascendant lord is in this very cold Shastyamsha and aspected by Saturn.
And Lars, I have to remind this, and this is very important, and I just said it. If you don't have an accurate time of birth,
don't use this.
This is useful. Don't use it. Don't be responsible.
Especially at this level, because we're talking about half a degree per Shasti.
Yeah, 30 minutes of arc. Yeah,
half a freaking degree. So that's how we get 60 Shastyamshas for sign. And also they reverse for even signs according to Parashara. So just keep that in mind. But this stuff is very, you would probably do better using these in Prashna and Horary, because that's where we do have the exact time, every time. Right. And so that's where there's going to be no doubt. In a birth chart, there's always some degree of doubt. And, I think we've talked about this before, neither of us fully believe in rectification. I will say that I think that there's some degree of rectification that's possible. If the person knows within a few hours, I think you could. But if you're trying to be no, I have to rectify it by 2 minutes or something. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say that's impossible. We do have a friend that does that, and they are a very good reader. So, I don't really know how to do that. I
think rectification is like a gift that people have to be born with in terms of the ability to rectify charts. I don't have it. I don't pretend to know. I have it. I think I could develop it if I continue learning Jyotish, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's not something that a person who has 10 years of experience can do.
No.
You have to have somebody who has had decades of experience.
Agreed.
And listen to the people who've been doing this for decades, because rectification is probably the most difficult thing to do in Jyotish.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So anyway, 42 to 53 Varga classification. This is where this is
important. Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little ignorant on it. So why don't you comment on it?
Okay. The thing is that let me move this here. So basically, I'm not going to talk about the first part of it. I'm just going to go down with it, because at the end, he says something that's very important. And if you can, in these divisions, the divisions falling in the planets, can you see that?
Here.
The last one? No, the last one.
In these
I'm also very ignorant. Yeah, that one. I'm very ignorant about the first part. So, I don't know if we want to read it or we want to mention it, because I
think, for our viewers, it's just he's classifying, he's saying that there's
the different groups
Yeah, there's a grouping of the first 6, then there's a
yes,
grouping of the first 7, a grouping of the
yes,
first 10, and then the
yes,
entire 16.
exactly.
These
And
mean different things and are used in different kind of esoteric techniques. So.
yes, and not only that, we're going to be discussing that with Vinchopaka. I forgot about that, but yeah, we're going to be discussing about Vinchopaka. But they're basically 4 groups of Vargas.
Yeah.
There's basically the 6 divisions, which are the Shat Varga, 6 Shat, obviously. The Sapta Varga, which are the 7 divisions, the Dasha Varga, which are 10, and obviously the Shodasa Varga. And we're going to be using those different groups for the subsequent Pinchopaka analysis that we're going to be using for the Dasha qualification.
Which I never ever use, by the way, so I'll be curious.
I've used it.
See what you have to say about it.
Yeah, the thing is that different people calculate it differently. But
okay.
The Vinchopaka is very good to determine the ability of the Dasha to give results. And this is done by analyzing, the different dignities of the planets per Varga. Okay. Now there are difficulties because, as we're going to see here, this is how Parashara determines how a planet is going to do good in a Varga. And it says in these divisions, the divisions falling in the planet's exaltation sign, Mula Trikona, own sign, and the sign owned by the Lord of an angle from the Aruda ascendant are all to be considered as good Vargas. So you see here, and I'm mentioning this because there are a lot of people who use different ways to qualify planets in Vargas. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but Parashara says that the good positions are basically the obvious one, Ucha, exaltation, Mula Trikona, and what was the other ones?
And the sign, its own sign, and the signs owned by the Lord of an angle.
Swakshetra.
So that's very interesting.
And that's a problem. There's a different way to interpret that. Santanam says it's the from Swamsha, right? Angle from Swamsha in any chart. So it will be the angle from the Atmakarka. But it could be the Aruda of the Lagna in the Varga. You don't know. I mean, there's different ways to interpret that. But this is the way you qualify it. It has nothing to do with aspects in Vargas. I mean, we could extrapolate this from Sambandha relationships, which kind of work. But this is how Parashara says. And then he says something that is quite complicated, because then he says the divisions of a combust planet, defeated planet, weak planet, and a planet in a bad avashta like Sayana avashta be all ignored to be auspicious, for these destroy the good yogas. Now there's a problem here, because how are you going to determine a combust planet in a Varga?
Oh, well, the thing is that
the combust planet has to be
it's an astronomical thing, so it's always combust. Once it's combust through all the Vargas, theoretically.
Exactly. But some people might think it's combustion in the Varga.
Well, they got to learn astronomy.
But that's the thing, Lars. There is a debate, and this is quite prevalent. Some people use aspects in Vargas. Some people don't use aspects in Vargas. I don't know who's right.
No, it's not. It's not a matter of who's right and who's wrong. There are just different approaches, right? Like I like to use the French tarot deck the most. That's my favorite tarot deck to use, right? But you like to use the card deck, right? Is one of us right and one of us wrong? Well, no, because what works for you works for you. What works for me works for me. And so, this is the thing too. Like I was just going to say, arguably you can say any planet that falls, forget about the Aruda ascendant, any planet that falls in a division that puts it in an angle from the ascendant or from the moon could also be considered very strong and important, because the angles are the most active places in all types of astrology as far as I can ascertain. The angles are, they call it the Vishnu Sthana, the 1, 4, 7, and 10, right? These they're just very, that's the wheel that's turning, right? So and a lot of people don't do this, but I think it's a great way to use divisionals, is put the divisional planet positions outside the Rashi chart and read it that way instead of making a whole new chart, because you'll get something interesting out of that, where it ties it more directly into the Rashi chart. And that's how they used to do it too. That's the older way of doing it.
and he's giving here like astronomical delineations to see the quality of the planet in the Varga. But in the Varga, it's not real space. It's just a subdivision of real space.
Yeah.
And then a lot of queries arise, specifically with the Graha Yudra there of a planet defeated. A weak planet is obvious. It has to be debilitated in a chart, so that's easy. But then he mentions the Avashtas, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Why don't you explain this in more detail?
Yeah.
And this has to do with the different ways that people interpret the Vargas. And believe me, if you had the money to do the investigation, as we've said before, in terms of having the money to see the capacity of different astrologers to rectify a chart.
Yeah, sure.
You could also do this by taking courses on Varga analysis.
Sure.
Everyone's gonna teach them differently, but Parashara says, this is how you measure them. And then you're going to be seeing this in the next chapter and how we use it in Vinchopaka analysis. So
cool.
Let's move on then. Yeah, look at all the commentary Santanam gave.
It's a lot. What's nice about this though is he will just list what Parashara lists here in the shloka right here, right? So this is what Parashara is saying for all these, right?
And by the way, this is an important shloka.
Yes.
This is an important shloka. And let's analyze this because we're going to see what the tradition says, and we're going to see what the modern astrology says. And this is very important. You want to read the Santanam commentary?
Yeah, it'll just be easier. So we have ascendant for well-being or otherwise the physique. So that's the Rashi chart.
No problem there.
Cool. Hora for wealth. Okay. Decadent for happiness through co-born, right? Meaning siblings. Chaturtamsha for fortunes. Okay. So like having more money and, maybe winning the lottery, things like that. But just the general fortune, you could say. Saptamamsha. Or Saptamsha, I think it's spelled wrong here. For dynasty, meaning progeny, like children and grandchildren. Navamsha for spouse. Dasamsha for power and position. Dwadasamsha for parents and grandparents. I believe it says that in there somewhere. Anyway, Shodas Samsha for conveyances and related happiness. It's kind of a weird one. Vim Shamsha for worship, spiritual progress, religious activities. Chaturvim Samsha for academic achievements. Bamsha for strength and weakness. Trim Samsha for evils. Kavedamsha for auspicious and inauspicious effects. Akshavedamsha for all general indications. And Shashtiamsha for all general indications. So quite a lot there for us to look at, right?
I've said this. I said this in the Yavanajataka. I never go beyond the D12. I never go beyond the eighth one, which is the Dwadasamsha, because of the thing with the time of birth.
Time of birth being spurious.
And you're gonna see that from the eighth onward, like from the Shodamsha until the Shashtiamsha. They're very subjective descriptions. You have general indications for the last two, which are the most detailed ones, and you kind of have things to have to do with spirit and evils and misfortunes. I think the only exception would be the academic achievements, but more or less, all of them are very subjective, and I think this has to do with the time of birth. I think it has to do with the idea that usually, maybe in the past, the idea of having an exact time of birth was really hard. So the further we go on these subdivisionals, the more general they have to be, because they're probably going to be inaccurate.
Yeah.
And once again, look at the descriptions. I mean, we can read from the shloka directly, which is more or less the same as the commentary. Look at for example, the Drekana. It says happiness from brothers. It has nothing to do with valor or strength. People use that because they extrapolate that from brothers, which has correlated to Mars.
And the third house, right?
And the third house.
Yeah.
Look at the other one, Saptamsha, for example. Saptamsha, people talk about children, but usually people associate it also with
the seventh house.
with partners because of the seventh, and because you have to have a male or a female to
yeah,
to have children.
And let me just say too that Gemini actually does associate Septamsha with seventh house matters, but Gemini, well, at least according to the research our friend Roque is doing to bring him up again, Gemini actually used a different type of Septamsha division. He uses different types of divisions than Parashara gives. He actually uses divisions that are truly...
Roque mentions that, right?
Yeah, that are truly harmonic and divisional in the sense that
I remember,
it's actually a true division by 7. It's not this like special thing where you go to the opposite side. I'm sorry. This Saptamsha formula does end up being harmonic, but harmonic meaning that the Navamsha is harmonic, the Saptamsha is harmonic, meaning that it just keeps repeating. Like you start with sign A and you proceed around the whole zodiac, just repeating the order of signs. There's no special kind of like he gave in the Dasamsha where you go to the 9th from an even sign, so Gemini used a slightly different divisions than Parashara gives. And
another thing,
that's just a side note, but
and another thing I want to mention, although Parashara is gonna mention this further on as we move on, look at the Navamsha. It says spouse.
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything about dignity, although he's going to mention that in further chapters, which kind of makes you think, then why didn't he mention it here? It doesn't say anything about past lives. I've seen people use Navamsha for past life things.
Doesn't say anything about the soul.
Doesn't say anything about that.
Navamsha is the chart of the soul. No, it's not.
People associate that because of the 9th house.
Yeah, because of New Age stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But the thing is that Parashara does not give that. It gives for spouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to say too, like I should have said this earlier. We can see here a major deviation from the much earlier Yavanajataka, right? Yavanajataka does not say to use Hora for wealth. It does not say to use Saptamsha.
I remember that. Yeah.
It does not say to use Navamsha for spouse or Dwadasamsha for parents, right? It actually gives subtle hints about how to use these through its delineations. And for Navamsha, what I've surmised from Yavanajataka is that Navamsha is really about how it's a lot more to do with like the mind and the mentality of the person. And traditionally, orally in Jyotish, people say the birth chart is the karmas, but the Navamsha is the fruit of those karmas. And I think that that's very much in line with what Yavanajataka is hinting at through its variety of shlokas. But nowhere in Yavanajataka does it emphasize spouse from Navamsha. So this is a very interesting
there's contradiction.
It's somebody's or some group of people's approach to these techniques that developed in the Middle Ages or whatever in India. This is one perspective on how to use these vargas. It's not the end all be all. And so people do get confused when I talk about using Dwadasamshas for basically all things generally, because most Jyotishis seem to be more familiar with this perspective, and that's fine. It's not to say it doesn't work. It's just to say that we have to remember that this is one perspective on how to use
Lars, can you scroll up so people can read the actual shloka?
Yeah.
You have it there, and at the same time, which I just mentioned, Shashtiamsha has nothing. It doesn't say anything about past lives.
Yeah, it says all indications from both Aksha, Vedampsha, and Shastiamsha. And then if you get a magnifying glass and look right there, it says and past lives and ascended masters. Yeah, you just can't see.
Where does it say that?
Yeah, you just got to get a magnifying glass and actually a microscope. You need a microscope.
The invisible one.
Yeah. So like it is in there, but
I mean, this is very important because you get and I mean the problem is, Lars, I'm a very traditional guy.
Yeah.
And the thing is that there are modern techniques that have developed in the past 200 years or less that have introduced themselves into Jyotish as old techniques.
As old techniques, yeah.
And they're not. They're not.
No.
They're actually Western techniques. They're Western in
really
origin. Funny. It's Western in origin from theosophical interpretations of astrological texts from a modern perspective, where evolution and progress are key to understanding the world, and that has nothing to do with the traditional perspective of transcendence, of moksha.
Yeah, well, remember too, though, that evolution is being misused because evolution is not progress. Evolution is literally just means the unfolding of what was already there.
Yes, but that's unfolding. That's not evolution.
No,
but
that is. If you look up the etymology.
It's not the scientific application of the word, but I know what you mean.
No, but the real traditional application. Yeah, but it's an important semantical kind of, it's important because when you read somebody like Sri Aurobindo and you see him use the word evolution, he's not using it the way a Darwinian would use it,
because it's the idea of linear progress, that we are going up a mountain
and of something becoming something that it never was. Like real evolution, it has to conform to the archetype of what it always was from the beginning.
And not only that, these Westerners took the idea of reincarnation and put it on an evolutionary context. Yeah. And that's not the idea of reincarnation. Reincarnation is a tedious process of coming back. And you don't want to come back. You want to go out.
You don't want to have to come back.
Yeah, you want moksha
to come back. That's great.
Liberation, right? And the Easterners do it through asceticism, and the Westerners do it more through a path of action and heroism. But in a way, both are interchangeable. But the essence is that there's no mention of past lives here. And this is something that if Indians are watching this, please comment below, because this is a very important thing that is, because, people in India are very adamant about protecting their culture and protecting and in our Jyotish context, protecting the but in essence, these techniques are not really traditionally Vedic. If you really
they're not, and this stuff has been warped because of the West. Like you're saying, like Westerners place so much emphasis on past lives and past life regression and reincarnational theories and stuff. But in reality, like one of the greatest teachers the cosmos has ever seen, who came out of India, right, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, is recorded as having said to people who asked him about this kind of stuff, past lives and these kinds of things, he was recorded as having said, it is as though there was a dying man who had an arrow shot, dying from an arrow shot. And when the physician was about to pull out the arrow and heal the wound, he wouldn't let him. And he kept asking questions like, but who shot the arrow? And why was I cursed with being shot by the arrow? And how long is the arrow? And how much is it going to hurt? And how long is this going to take to heal? And do you really know what you're doing? And what is the arrow made out of, right? These are superfluous things that cause the death of the person rather than just removing the root of the problem, which was the Buddha's whole, his whole mission. And so that's what happens when people start to get, they start to get obsessed with seeing past lives from the birth chart and stuff. It's not to say it's impossible. I've done it. I've successfully seen some past life stuff from a birth chart, but it's not important.
Exactly.
It's really not important.
Irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
If you see it, you might be seeing it for a reason. And then maybe you are supposed to mention it to the client.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even then, you got to know if they're ready to hear it. But
it's just a gimmick to sell. It's just a gimmick to impress the Shudras in this world of consumerism and consumption. And that's the reality of it. It's just a gimmick to sell that vulgarizes the art and science of astrology, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
I mean, it's not a bad thing to do, but it's not traditional. That's all.
It's not traditional. Yeah. And that's the thing, is like in none of these traditional texts do they talk about how to discern the past lives from a person's chart. Because again, spiritually speaking, this is the life that you're dealing with. This is the chapter of
and you can't remember the past lives, and you're not supposed to remember them. Because you got to
supposedly you do if you reach a level of enlightenment.
And obviously the past and not only that, the past lives express themselves through samskaras and the karmas, and that's how you realize.
That's what we're looking at in astrology too. Like the chart is really showing our vasanas and samskaras and karmas, as you're saying.
Exactly.
So it's basically the mind. The chart is a picture of the mind. And the mind is what holds all of these things within itself. So, okay, cool. Yeah, I think, I don't know, like we just covered a lot. How do you want to proceed with the rest of this chapter?
Well, let's do it. This is easy. Don't worry.
Okay,
So
cool.
next chapter, we're here. What are we talking about here? The Beam Chopaka system?
Oh, yeah. So Vim Chopak is really...
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just show it. I mean, let's just read, because I don't remember the quantities of how it's good or bad.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think he gives it in a commentary in the next one.
Yeah, and let me just say real quick too that like when I studied a lot of Ernst Wilhelm's material, it was his opinion that this was like a very out of place technique, because the rest of the pointing systems given in Parashara are based on 60 Virupas or 1 Rupa, and we'll see that later and we'll talk about it in subsequent videos. But he felt like this was really out of place because he saw the 20-point system used a lot in Tajika astrology, which is the solar return Persian.
Which is pretty modern in terms of astrological development. I mean, it's basically right there with the dating that we gave in terms of the 7th, 8th century AD.
Sure, yeah.
Of this text.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, Ernst was kind of the opinion that he just felt like this didn't really fit in this text, and I'm not making that claim. I just wanted to put that out there, that this is another one of those things. It's like, why is this here? Like, why do we all of a sudden have like a 20-point strength system?
And not only that, the next shlokas also are out of place, in my opinion. But the idea is that with Bim Chopaka, without getting too much into detail, the higher the score, the better the dasha will be. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
And that's the idea. The highest score you can get is 20. If you get 20, it's great. And there are 4 different sections for it. You can calculate it from the 6 group divisions, from the 7 group divisions, from the 10 group divisions, or from the 16 group divisions. And the higher the number, the better the dasha will be in expressing its results. That's the theory.
That's the idea. Okay, so
but usually you're never going to see a perfect 20.
Yeah, so it's just a way. It's just a way of putting a mathematical, symbolical measurement to something that's essentially intangible to help us as astrologers, have a little bit more of a grasp of kind of this basic essence of how things are going to go.
Yeah,
and we have a lot of stuff like this. Like when we talk about Shadbala later on, Shadbala is the same thing. It's like trying to put a mathematical value on something that's essentially intangible, just to give our minds a little bit of a break,
And when you analyze dashas, you have different tools. You have Bim Chopaka. You also obviously have to identify the dignity of the planet in itself. You also see the prashna, the transit of the planet right when the dasha started. And then you kind of figure out how that is going to play out. And you have there 3 tools to figure out the capacity of the planet, and by dignity, you check, everything, dignity, Chatvala, dignity in the D9, you use the transit, you use Bim Chopaka, and then, and you also, and then you combine all of them and you kind of figure out how this dasha is going to play out. Yeah. And then we have the idea of the effects from Hora and Decadent, and it says
and Trimsamsha.
And it says, can you color it, please?
Yeah.
Jupiter, the Sun, and Mars give pronounced effects in the Hora of the Sun. The Moon, Venus, Saturn so when in Moon's Hora. Mercury is affected both Horas. In the case of an even Rashi, the Hora of the Moon will be powerful, and the effects of the Sun's Hora in an odd sign will be so. Full, medium, and nil will be the effects respectively of the beginning, middle, of the end of Hora. Similar applications be made for Decadent, Trimsamsha, Navamsha, etc. Here we have the idea of how the Hora is calculated. As we've said before, I know 2 ways how to calculate it. One is where you use the Cancer and Leo only, and another one is like you use it like a regular Varga. But I think this has to do a lot with sects in many ways.
It is.
How it has to be calculated. And sect, we've already saw sect in the past chapter 3. We kind of see sect here in a really weird occult way, in terms of hidden way. And then we're going to see sect once again in Kalavala and Chatbala. which once again, gives a little bit of proof of how these traditions were all mixed together back then.
Yeah, and I think this is actually, the Hora stuff here is a useful technique. Of course, being more Hellenistic in my disposition of sect, I would switch, Venus with Jupiter and stuff, whatever. I would switch it like we talked about it. But anyway, what I was going to say too is like one way
Saturn and Mars.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry. Yeah, one way I've used the Hora is just to see, take the ascendant and the 7 planets and see if there's more in a sun's Hora or a moon's Hora. And that will actually give you a really nice overview of the chart and the person's life. Very, very basic, but it will help you discern, are they more active or are they more receiving, right? Like solar or lunar. And then you could add in this kind of thing like, oh, well, they're more solar, but look, they've got all these nocturnal planets in solar Horas, which actually makes a subtle conflict, and you might be able to extrapolate things from that, so I like things like this, but anyway, on to the rest of Wim Shopak, right? It's
Wim Shopak, it's basically the same thing I explained, different points, and I think he comments the next page. I'm sorry, can you see?
Okay, here?
No, the next page.
The next page.
There you go. That's basically the point system that he gives for the Wim Shopak. And you see that there are the 4 groups, the 6, the 7, the 10, and the 16. And then you kind of see how it works out. And the higher the number, the better. But you usually do not get to 20. Okay?
Yeah, that would be pretty hard with all of the conditions to fulfill.
If you do that, you are an avatar. Yeah.
Cool. So Wim Shopak, it's just a method like Shadbala to assess something.
You see, look at there it is. 5 points inauspicious results, 5 to 10 some good effects, 10 to 15 mediocre effects, and 15 to 20 wholly favorable effects. So if you get from 15 to 20,
it's good.
That dasha is going to be good.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. And again, I don't use this. I do my best to keep the mathematical stuff to a minimum, but I think that, like anything, there's a nice logic here and it can work to your advantage if you're into it. So that's cool.
And these are funny shlokas that are very interesting. It says there are other sources of strength, and he says the 7th from the sun will be fully effective.
So that means a retrograde planet.
Really?
If a planet is in the 7th from the sun, it's going to be retrograde.
Usually, yeah. I didn't know that. No, but that's not usually how it works. It's not always retrograde, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I thought it had to do with the idea that it's like a full planet, like just like the full moon.
Yeah, it's that too. I think, the Jyotishis tend to treat retrograde a bit more like a strengthening factor than
Hellenistic, and we're going to talk about that.
And I think both are actually true and not really odds, but we'll talk about that later.
Me too.
So I use both. I say, okay, a retrograde planet is like a superabundance of that planet, but it also can be imbalanced,
Me too.
Like
it's like pain. It's like touching something too much and fucking it up. That's how
exactly. Yeah. And there are lots of examples. I'll just give one real quick. Like Billy Graham had an exalted, the preacher, the evangelist, he had an exalted Jupiter in Cancer retrograde ruling his 9th house. Right. And, this is a guy that did extremely well in Jupiter matters, extremely successful, extremely wealthy, extremely well known. Right. But arguably very like one-dimensional in his theological point of view, very, very much a zealot, overdoing the Jupiter, that kind of thing. And then
it goes on saying...
planets next to the sun basically combust, right, will destroy the planet's good effects. And combustion is a very complex...
Yes.
Combustion and retrogradation are very multi-layered, complex issues.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll talk about them.
We'll talk about that later because there's Cassini effect, which is actually amazing sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
And combustion, in Hellenistic is 15 degrees. The orbs for Jyotish vary, as you can see there.
Right here is kind of the traditional stuff. Although I don't think Parashara gives these, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I think he gives them further on because You see, these chapters are mixed. As you can see, we started with we started with Vinchopaga, and now we're doing it. And the next page, we go
Dasha effects within Shopak strength.
Exactly, which is what I talked about.
Yeah.
Then, we have
angles and find. So this is interesting. This is very useful information. But again, why is it here, right?
Yeah.
We don't really know why it's here. It probably could have been in a new chapter. But we basically have the Kendras, right? 4th, 7th, and 10th
quadrants
houses, right? From any place, but from the ascendant. So those are being called, he's just telling us the names. Then the 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th are Panafaras, which basically means about to rise.
Succeedants,
Yeah, 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th are called apoklimas, or cadence, falling away. These are actually Greek Hellenistic terms, just like in Yavanajataka. 5th and 9th from the ascendant are known by the name Kona or trine. Evil houses or trik houses are the 6th, 8th, and 12th. Chaturasras are the 4th and 8th. Okay, and then 3rd, 6th, and 10th and 11th houses are upachaya. So again, this is exactly as we find it in Yavanajataka. Chaturasas, I think
that's what I wanted to say.
This is a mistake personally from Yavanajataka. I still consider this questionable because this really means squares, and the 8th is not a square.
That's something I wanted to say because I've asked my teachers about this and nobody knows how to answer.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what chaturarchas are. I looked it up in the internet and I kind of really didn't get any response. I mean, the 8th is the 5th from the 4th, and the 4th is the 9th from the 8th.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's like a trikona relationship there, but and they're moksha houses.
Sure.
Theory, but I mean, I don't know what they are. And then you go here for the names of the Babas. And I just want to say that Yavanajataka also gives the names of the Babas in chapter 1, stanza 15. Okay. And they kind of differ, but in essence, you're going to see that the Babas per se have a lot of names to them. And, I have a book here that kind of gives, once again, I'm quoting from Mr. Chandrasekhar Sharma's book, which is highly underrated, which is amazing book. And he kind of gives a list for all the names that the houses have. And it's I'm just going to quote one. I'm just going to look it up if you can continue talking while I look it up.
So we've got these wonderful Sanskrit names here and whatnot, and these are worthwhile to consider. I don't really know what all of them mean. Like, I know that, let's see.
Yeah, for example.
Putra means children, for example.
Children, yeah. Aries is enemy. Let me just read the names that Yavanajataka says, and then I'm going to quote just a little chapter from Mr. Shekhar Brooks.
Okay, sounds good, yeah.
So chapter 115, chapter 1, stanza 15, Barahamihira says, the 12 houses from Lagna have been giving the following names. Tanu, and what does Yavanajataka, what does Parashara say? Tan, which is body, okay? Then he says Kutumba for the second, which is family. But then Parashara gives Dana, which is money.
Wealth. Yeah, money.
Then the third is Sahotha, which is brothers.
Yeah.
Bandhu, Sahaha, I don't know what it means.
I think it's the same thing, but
okay, hopefully.
Yeah.
Then the 4 is Bandhu, which is like kingship, so it makes sense.
Okay. Putra.
Yeah. Putra, Yavanajataka says Putra is children. 6 is Ari, enemy. Okay. He says Ari also. 7 is Patni.
Okay, here it's Yuvati, which means
Patni
wife.
is wife.
They're both
they're
white?
Both the same.
I don't know. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Weird. Okay, Rantara.
Then the 8th is Marana.
Okay, here it's Randara, which means longevity. But what does it translate to in Yavanajataka?
Marana is death, so it's more or less the same.
Okay.
9 is Shubha, which is like happiness.
Auspiciousness, yeah.
Dharma is religion, so it makes sense. Yeah. The 10 is Aspada, which means power or status.
Okay, yeah, here it's karma.
Karma acts, of course. Yeah. The 11 is Aya, which basically means gains.
Yeah,
fortune is the same thing. And then
okay.
And then Ripha, which means like losses.
Yeah, here it's Vaya, which is translated as expenditure.
And just to give you an idea, you know, just here, Mr. Chandrasekhar Sharma's book, just the different names for the fourth bhava. He says fourth bhava is called Chaturtha, fourth, Patal, literally hell, opposite of Swarga or heaven.
Yeah, sure.
A name given to the 10th bhava, thus meaning midnight. Hibuka, fourth house in astrology. Kashiti, land. Matru, mother. Vidya, education. Jan, vehicle. Geha, house. Shukha, happiness. Bandhu, brother. And Shatus, staya, square. The education seen from this bhava is related to likita, or written form of education, which is like a formal form of education. We may equate this to graduation in modern terms. So you see, there's a lot of names which I probably extrapolate from the different regions of India and how they relate these names to the different bhavas. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Cool. Okay, and then finally we have this shloka here that's, again, a little out of place, but kind of to demonstrate.
Oh yes, but this is a very nice one. Yeah,
it's a very
way out of place.
Useful shloka where basically he's saying that you can take, you know, for example, like the ninth, we'll see later on, traditionally also refers to the father, and so does the sun. And so if you look at the ninth from the sun, you can get also information about the father. And you can also read the 10th and 11th from the sun, or he's advising that. And he also advises to read the 4th, 1st, 2nd, 11th, and 9th from the moon, because it's very important to look at those things to get confluence. And then the same for these other planets, which, you know, he's jumping ahead of himself, but, you know, the third house refers to siblings, and so does Mars. So you can look at the third from Mars for siblings, right? And the 6th from Mercury for disease, and so on, 5th from Jupiter for children, because they both signify children, right? So it's just kind of, this is a really cool technique, especially if you don't have an accurate birth time and you want to just read from Chandra Lagna and mix these things in as well. You know, it can be useful stuff. It can also be useful to say, instead of looking at Jupiter for the person's children, right? Like you look at the 5th from Jupiter for their children. Likewise, you could look at the 9th from Jupiter for their guru.
Yeah. And that's how you get confluence. Yeah.
Right. But you could look at Jupiter itself as more to do with the person's inner Jupiter, you know, and it's a way of differentiating. So it's a nice, very nice technique, very logical, and works well in practice. So,
which kind of goes with the logic of Bhavat Bhavan, the idea of, you know, how houses juxtaposition each other and create different types of
right,
ways.
like the third house is the 8th house from the 8th, for those unfamiliar with Bhavat Bhavam. And so it's like a secondary 8th house and so on. So I think, that does it for these chapters.
Man, these chapters were going in deep.
Yeah. And that was a whirlwind. So I think I don't have anything else to say.
No, me neither. I mean, do you?
No.
I mean, if people, please, if you have any comment, just write them down, and you know, we can discuss it. You know, this is the greatness of this platform. I mean, this video is gonna be here as long as Lars keeps his channel and does not erase it.
Yeah.
So just let's talk about this, because there are a lot of things that, you know, the famous quote, as I said, people quote a lot Parashara but have seldom read it.
Yeah.
And in these past 2 videos that we just made, the first chapters, there are a lot of things that people repeat that are not in Parashara. So we just want to discuss and just talk about these things and see what you think about it, especially if you're from India, especially if you come from a tradition of Jyotishis, because this is important stuff.
Cool. Yeah, very well said. All right. Well, with that, thanks again, man. It was fun. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share, check out our websites and all our other pages. That'll be in the description below. And otherwise, have a great day. And we'll see you next time for some more Parashara.